That is it. And I was like, okay, if I have to have another conversation with another person, so I'm just grateful to have this platform, right? To know that we have, there's so many people who are on the side of what they want to, and so that's what I'm in pursuit of. So let's see. All right, it looks like we are now live. Hey, y'all, hey, it's Tracy time. Time for another moment with me, Tracy T. It's a marvelous Monday. Rain or shine wherever you are. It's rainy here, but we're just going to let the sun shine. We're going to make our own sunshine, aren't we, Theryn? I'm here with Theryn C. Bond. I told y'all she's back. I cannot wait. We have so much to talk about in OMG. Let me say something to you first. You know, Theryn, like me, we have a whole host of folks who are fully engaged, who are current on the topic, who understand the issues, who understand the importance of voting, right? I accepted a challenge last week to have my maternal side of the family post videos for why it was important for them to vote. And then I extended it to my paternal side of the family. And so I am just going to continue to do that challenge. You know, families have full spectrum, right? We have the whole age group, every generation is represented. And my mother did one. My mother, 74 years old, she is not a technologically savvy person. She followed the instructions beautifully. She was determined, moreover, to make sure that her voice was heard. And she did a video. So I'm saying to myself, if my 74-year-old mother, who I coached through the process with my sister Jackie's help, remotely, right? We're not even in the same state. I couldn't even sit with her and say, okay, mom, do this and do this. And she did it because she was so passionate about it. Then what the heck, Jekyll and Hyde, is wrong with these young adults who have their phones in their hands every moment of every day like it's an extra dang on appendage, who could not post a video about why voting is important to them? Can you tell me that, please?
We tired.
Serious question.
We tired and we can stop there. There are so many. I firmly believe that there are people who young people who want to have their voices heard. Like, that's all young people want, is for you to hear us, right? And so I think where some people get caught up is there are barriers or judgments placed on them around the electoral process, where they say, well, you got to vote for this person because of this, or this is what we're up against. And while those things may be true, synonymously, they may not directly affect them or be presented to that particular young person in a way for them to get it, for them to fully understand, you know what, yes, we will not see microwave solutions, but my vote for this issue or this person will have long-lasting effects. So what we have to do is make it make sense for them. And does it require a bit extra work for us? Absolutely. But is it necessary, and should we be willing to? We have to, because there is so much at stake. And so the same way when city elections come along and people say, well, why should you vote for such and such? You go, well, are you mad that your utility bill is high? Because, you know, those are things that they affect. You know, the rates for those, they have a say in. When you talk about your property taxes, well, do you know the county commission deals with that? So you've got to find ways to make it relate. At some point, everybody has been ill or had an ill relative or had somebody pass away, and it's been a struggle to cover expenses. Well, that goes to federal level and state level stuff. Guess what? Those are people we're voting for this year. So if those are issues that matter to you or that you've been impacted by, that's a reason to vote. So I think the problem is some of our more seasoned generations say, well, here are 10 reasons why you gotta go vote. And then young people go and turn it all the way down. What we have to do is figure out at least one issue and say, if this is what gets you in the door, that's what I need to carry with you all the way to the polls, even if it's just one. And then let's find other ways to expound upon those as the time leads up to election day.
Okay, that's good. I get that, Theryn, that it's more like, instead of force feeding you and drinking out of a fire hose, just let me give you a little taste. And then you can bite that off and chew it and digest that more readily than you would if someone was literally forcing you and stuffing your mouth with food and you're gagging on it to the point where you're like, okay, I don't even want any of it because it's just too much, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that makes sense. So now let me ask you this. We know, let's take a moment, because my feelings still hurt. I'm still sad. RBG.
Yeah.
Who, Theryn? Okay, let's use the example that you just provided. And let's say that we know that there's some young adults and then some older adults too, really, who don't know the contributions that Notorious RBG made, who don't fully understand the impact of having her die at the time that she has died and what that means in terms of the court justice appointment and then the selection, the nominee that's being appointed. What would someone that's in my position, in my age group say? What would you empower me? I need a tool to say, you know, the Notorious RBG has died, and here's what it means to you, and to make that, you know, I'm trying to still be this bridge. What would be the bridge?
I would definitely say it airs on just rights, equal rights, human rights, gender equality, women's rights. The late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg has been the deciding factor in some monumental cases during her time served. And so I firmly believe that she held on as long as she could.
Yes.
And just, she could not handle it anymore, and she had to let go as smoothly as possible. And being someone that has been through a cancer journey, I 100% get it. And having had other friends who have experienced that, some who have died and some who are now on the survivor side of things, it is a lot. And to have somebody hold on that long, literally holding up the entire country on her shoulders while going through all that she was, is a lot. But sometimes you just say, you know, job well done, time is served. Now, where we are in the country is getting the extreme opposite, potentially. What we're seeing is a lot of legislators who said, well, you know, we should wait until we get the next president before anything is decided. And now you're having those same people say, fill the seat immediately. Well, what's the rush? Are there reservations around who the next president will be, and you don't want to leave it up to a more democratic president? Or do you say, well, no, let's hand Trump, you know, the rest of what is left, which ain't much, and say, here, have it, do your thing. No, so we are in trouble, but we can use this as an example to vote for all the other races down the ballot, right? Because the reason that somebody becomes a Supreme Court nominee is because the president appoints them, and then they go through confirmation hearings. Those people are voted on. And then state level people are connected to them, and city and county level people are connected to them. So ultimately, these people get in these positions because they are put on a ballot, because X amount of people signed a petition so they can legally run. Then they run and win, and now they are in position to vote at various levels of leadership. That's why it's important to vote, because it all trickles down at some point, and I can connect anything to anything for anybody about it. And so her contribution with women's rights is probably the most critical thing on the table right now, because they have made every attempt to put Roe versus Wade on the chopping block. Every chance they get, it's there. And then also the Affordable Care Act. There's a hearing coming up within weeks of the election being finished. So that means between November and January, we still got a clown in the White House who can still rightfully make certain decisions. So we've got to be prepared for one, to clean out the garbage and start anew in January. And we've also got to be prepared for that time between November and January also. And the only way we even have a fighting chance is for people to go to the polls and vote.
Ooh, that was a lot. That was a lot.
That's every day. It's every day.
That's a lot, right? That's a lot.
We gotta go this hard every day.
And that's why you can understand people just say, okay, I'm just numb. I can't take it. I'm ready for it to be over. I don't want to hear it anymore. Like they start, you know, tuning deaf ears and blind eyes to everything. And so that is one of the reasons why I wanted you to be with me at lunch today, because it is so important for us to allow ourselves to take that breath, but then get back up and get back in it, right? Because it is a lot. It is overwhelming. And let me say hey to people watching us. We got Tara Richardson, Azelle, Linda Shop, and Anthony Talley. Hey, y'all. Hey, Theryn is bringing us news we can use. Let me tell you something. I said this last week when I was making sure that people knew that you were going to be on with me, that I am a an activist in the sense that I want to stand on the side of what is right. I want to be on the right side of history, right? We always want to make sure if we have a moral fiber in us, that we have character, that we understand empathy and literally caring about our human race, period. That as Black women, we have the extra burden, right, of not being considered equal to men, not being considered equal with white people, and then all of the disparities and all the variances in between. You just stack them up, right? But here's the thing that I love about you, Theryn, that you have educated yourself, that you are so amazingly informed about what is happening, and that you, what you said before, you can truly take one thing and say, oh, you think that your street doesn't, having bumps in the road doesn't matter? Well, let me show you how that connects to this and to this and to this and to this. And you can literally take that one thing on their street and take it all the way up to the White House. You can literally say, all these things are connected, and they are. I think that is one of the things that we, everyday we don't understand, and why we only get involved when it's a presidential election and not in all of the things that matter every day in your local city and state, right? How do we get people to be engaged and understand that this political thing, this whole governmental process is really three prongs, right? We know that it's not just the presidential election. The president actually just goes by state and Senate, and then we have local government. Am I right?
Yeah, you have a couple of things. So like this year in particular, you have the presidential race. You also have U.S. Senate, which is huge because we're talking about flipping a U.S. Senate seat from Republican to Democrat. And then you have a handful of your state Senate races and then your state House of Representatives. So when we talk about protest bills, when we talk about Medicaid expansion, when we talk about criminal justice reform, guess what? Your state level representatives and your state senators decide that your governor too, but he got a few more years before we get him up out of there. But those people are who control that. But with relationships with your U.S. senators and people that are in the White House, you can make things move or you can stop them in their tracks. But we have to start at the level that we are most connected to. For some folks, that's city and county. For others, it's state. But your state level officials are elected locally by district. So it's not a statewide office, but the votes that they cast represent the entire state based on the city district they live in. And so people need to understand all those things are connected. And what we see often is sometimes city and county officials will say that's a state thing. And then sometimes the state will say, well, that can be handled through your city and county. So it's important to know how they all work, what each part affects, what's going on. And then all these different organizations have what we call legislative agendas that they craft and that they present to these different officials to say, this is what my particular organization would want to see. And then they partner with other organizations that are thinking along the same lines and say, this is what we want to see you as representative so-and-so put up. There's a short window for that. Some people work on it consistently, but as some of the freshman representatives, they'll have a short window between November and January to get their potential 15 bills in that they can send and say, this is what we want to see. Now, will they get all of them? Probably not. They may not get one, but there is that window for which they can present bills to be drafted and signed into law. We need to know those time frames, but we need to know what we want. We need to know, well, I'm mad at my prescription costs. What is that connected to? Could they be lowered if Medicaid is expanded in Tennessee? Absolutely, they can. So now I need to go talk to my state rep or my state senator. Those people are on the ballot this year. And then we've also got to do better about being proactive with IDing candidates, learning about them, questioning them, making sure their platform is representative of what we want to see. We got the DA's race coming up in 2022. Guess how long I've been knowing about the lead candidate for the DA's race? 2 years. 2. I shouldn't be the only one. There
No,
should
you
be
shouldn't.
other people that know and are working towards making sure the best person is going to be in that seat and run for that office and in it to win it and serve the people. Next year, we'll start to see stuff roll out for some people, but we can't wait until 2022 to do that. Just like people just now are getting connected to the presidential race. We've been seeing some of these people for months, for a couple of years, if we're being honest. We've got to find some way to keep up and keep connected, even if it's once a month. I'm going to check through all the news cycles to see what they're saying about the presidential race or the U.S. Senate or the state reps. Put Google alerts for people that you are concerned about. Google will email you and say, this person has been mentioned in the news, so you can keep up easily. We've got to find ways to make it make sense for us in order to stay informed so we can make informed decisions at the polls.
Tell me more about, we know that there are just a wide variety of tactics, I'll say, being used to disenfranchise voters, one of which is the ballot box. Now, you know, Trey Hargett, Secretary of State for Tennessee, has basically said, yeah, no, we could have those bots, but it opens the door for there to be potential fraud, right? Now, this is me supporting what you just said, Theryn. Trey Hargett, has been in his position since 2009. Since 2009. It's a 4-year term. The Secretary of State works for the state of Tennessee, right? A lot of those positions claim they're bipartisan. Okay, he said flat out, no questions asked. I'm Republican. I'm erring on the side of Trump. I'm not going to put ballot boxes in the state, and here's why. Okay, if we had just tapped in and tuned in and been current and laser focused enough to know what was happening with that race, even when because he's due for re-election, that position is due for re-election in 2021. If we had paid that, we wouldn't even have a person in a position who doesn't want a ballot box. Something as simple as having ballot boxes, y'all. And now because of that, we are literally facing the risk of having people with mail-in ballots be questioned. But now we were in a position when he was elected, and I want to even go back and say that I looked at that one position after you and I talked, and I said, okay, now this is something that we can absolutely make a difference on. This is a position that has no prerequisites, no qualifications, that we can absolutely have someone who represents the voice of people for the state of Tennessee. Having ballot boxes is not a one and done. They're used all the time. They can be used all the time. We have ballots, we have elections all the time, every year, okay? So how do we, I said that, and people were like, huh? And I was like, come on. That's my one little pain point. That's my one pain point. That's my one proof point now for you, Theryn, is what do we need to do? Because to me, you've been following the person for the position for 2 years. I've been looking at this like, we could get anybody to be Secretary of State. We don't have to have him in a position. He's been in there since 2009. We turn off though, right? We turn it off. When it's not a presidential election, we turn it off. And I'm sick of it. So I'm looking at everybody else with Theryn and saying, don't turn it off. You got to stay engaged. Our lives are literally at risk here. Our well-being is at risk, people. Theryn, okay, so let me say this. The notifications for Google are great. Yeah, because you laugh because I'm getting riled up because you know what I'm about to talk about. And I was totally, as the words of my grandmother would say, pitched off yesterday when I found this out. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But here's the thing for me. They want young adults in the panel that I had said that they need a bridge, right? They need a bridge. And Dr. Atwater was on in the panel. She came on with us and she said, you know, if we haven't passed the baton, if we haven't, you know, stressed the importance of this enough for you, then okay, that's our fault. We'll own that. But that doesn't excuse you. That doesn't prevent you from then now picking up the baton wherever we dropped it and taking it. So then how do we keep the bridge? Because you are just one person. You're a phenomenally well-read, versed, educated, informed person, but you're still just the one voice, right? How I want to ignite a flame. I want somebody else to be in a position where they are mad as hell. We have a Republican who's the Secretary of State who single-handedly prevented all of us from having ballot boxes, and then preventing our grandmothers and our aunts and our great uncles and our cousins who are non-ambulatory from being able to cast their ballot. That is the kind of stuff that I want people to see. So what am I missing?
Whew. Let's go all the way back to the Trey Hargett thing. So with our Secretary of State, and even with our General Assembly and with our Election Commission, I know it might be some people that are Republican out here, and that's fine, but we need to work really hard for all of this to match on the Democratic side, because what we've seen with our Republican leadership is it is failing us. And so imagine what it would look like if we had a Democrat as our Secretary of State, if we were in the majority in the General Assembly, so we had a 3-2 vote on the Election Commission. There would be a lot of things that we would see done differently. And regardless of what anybody says about being nonpartisan, that's a lie. Because guess what? When you go to vote, you vote for somebody. Now, you as a person may not vote because they have a D or an R, but when you vote and you start to crisscross and match up what values they align with, you will see a pattern that might be more Democratic, more Republican, along the lines of independent, libertarian. Like, you have all of these things. So you align somewhere, whether they admit it to you or not.
Right.
And so
I know.
Opportunity every time elections come around, we have an opportunity to maintain greatness, do better by digging ourselves out of a hole. We've been doing a lot of digging lately, but we don't have enough people with shovels to get us out the hole. We have to. I think a lot of people, they talk, and that's great. We have to have the conversations. That's what opens up the door. We've got to put some work and some actions behind it. There are organizations I've been a part of, and there were certain things we were going to do. And I'm like, we need to make sure we register people to vote. So it's okay. So we registered people to vote a few weekends ago. I'm actually getting on the phone with somebody after this call, like, hey, I know you're plugged in. We're plugged into each other. You're plugged into people in a different way. I'm plugged into people you're not. We need to make something happen this weekend. Can we find time to do that? People have got to make the time for the things that are going to affect all of us. We need not to wait until it's at our front door or in our backyard, because it might not be today, but it could be tomorrow. And you're going to wish there was somebody there fighting for you. We've got to do it. It's exhausting. And we've got to be willing to take an extra step past what we've normally done. I have to do it every single year, whether that means working with a candidate, bringing awareness to an issue, protesting, or whatever. I'm doing something next year that, Lord knows, I do not want to take my time in this way to do this, but I know that it is necessary, and I'm going to do it and knock the balls out the park with it. So we've got to do our part to find ways to step up and speak out and be consistent, but we can do that within what is comfortable. And by comfortable, I mean what is time consuming for us in a way that is not overwhelming. If you got one day a week, great. If you get once a month, great. If it's once a quarter, great. But whatever it is, be consistent in how you engage, and you'll start to see more information come to you. You'll start to recognize other things in the public, in the news with these issues. The more we become aware to it and make intentional time for it, the better we get. Better candidates in office, our issues get addressed quicker, and we're not struggling to wait until it's an election year before we decide we want to make improvements.
We know that there is an election every year. That is the one thing that, if nothing else, we drive home here, that there is an election every year. If you are registered to vote, which we want you to register to vote, that's number one. If you are eligible to vote, register to vote, and then get information. You've got to be informed, because being registered is not enough. I talked to, I don't know how many people a couple weeks ago, 3 weeks ago now, Theryn, And I created my own little voters registration drive, right? I had my own little table set up in an event, and I was, gloved, masked up and covered up and doing my social distancing, but I still asked everyone, are you registered to vote? And some people said, I've registered, but I haven't voted since Obama, or I haven't voted since Kennedy. And so I was like, okay, let's first off, that it's good that you're registered, but it's not enough, because you've got to exercise the right now that you've registered to use. And here's the thing that happened, two things. What I found in the registration is that, and I'm gonna make a statement, and then I'd love to get your feedback on this, Theryn, is that there were people, I was using vote.org, which I posted that on my page. I don't have any connection with vote.org. Vote.org was a site that I found because it was easy for me to tell people of all ages to go to that site, for them to check registration status and to then get registered if they needed it. And so I used vote.org. And some of the people that were, they were, oh no, I've registered to vote. I've been registered to vote since I was 18. I vote in every election. Okay, that's who you want to hear. Like, you want to go, yes, go forth and be empowered. But do you know, I had to actually stop and question, check your registration, because I had one person who said they voted in August, who was with someone who was a person who hadn't voted since Kennedy. And he said, just go ahead and check mine, since you're doing the other person, check mine too. Do you know the person that had voted in August had been purged out of the system? Now, tell me what your thoughts are about that.
Immediately, it sounds like another form of voter suppression. There is a time window with which people are typically purged. It should not have been as soon as August, because they would have voted then and kind of triggered that cycle over again. That is definitely something that individual needs to look at and question. There are people, I can connect them with someone. I'm not going to put their business out there because they are a very good ally when it comes to this. But I would definitely, if they have a letter or something, connect them with that person, because if it has happened to them, as soon as August, there's no telling how many people that's happened to, or whether there was some slight mix up or a name looked familiar, all these things, which should never be the case. But we've got to check it, and it's important for at this point with situations like that, I would encourage everybody to check it.
Yes.
Before October 5th.
Right.
Everybody check it and make sure, even if you just voted, check and make sure, double, triple check everybody in your household, on y'all Zoom happy hours, check those folks. Like, everybody's got to check, because we can't wait until after the fact and then go, oh, we're purged, and then now we can't vote. And while that's one person who just voted in August, that could be 1,000 people showing up in November. And we have seen so many elections, especially here locally, that have been decided by less than 1,000 votes, less than 100 votes at that. And we need every vote to count, because every vote matters, because every person matters. And the only way to do that is to make sure all of our ducks are in a row. And we've got to take the extra step to make sure that happens, because we know when we go in that ballot box, all their ducks might not be in a row. It might be a wait. It might not open on time. They might have a power outage. Machine count might go from 5 to 1. There are going to be all these things that happen at the spur of the moment that we have to be prepared for. So if all our ducks are in a row, we just have to wait our particular turn that day. But the good thing is there are all types of voter protection teams. There are going to be several hotlines that exist for people that have issues at the polls during early voting and also election day. We've got to use those resources. We've got to be made aware of those resources, and we've got to use them, because it's going to take every single one of us that can legally vote to do so.
That's right. That's right. I was absolutely shocked when I saw that, because the person who had not voted since Kennedy was in the system still. And then I thought, okay, now something is really wrong with this. So I have been telling everybody, just like you did, It doesn't matter if you voted in every election or you haven't voted since Kennedy. Check your registration status. And I cannot tell you how many people who, the theme here, there's a pattern that's established that the people that are active voters that I have directed, that are in my path, some of those people, I want to say about a third of them have been purged out of the system. So it lets me know that there's a problem. The other thing is that I posted, and anybody who's following me, who has seen any of my social media, I post for you to check your registration status. And I did that in a group last night there in Joe Biden for Tennessee. Well, I have every reason to believe that Joe Biden for Tennessee Facebook group is a political campaigning group, right? It's Biden, and at the time it was formed, Harris hadn't been announced, so that's the name. But now they say for Biden and Harris, which is fine. I've posted on there. Most of the things are very supportive of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And I haven't had issue. When you post something, it goes through an approval process and then it's let through. I posted last night for people to check their voters registration status. And I use vote.org. Again, I have no affiliation with vote.org. It's just the site that I've been able to use. And it is a quick, you can do a 30-second check with it, and you can do a 2-minute online registration if you're not registered to vote. People want convenience and ease in their hands.
Yeah.
So, okay, so my post was declined.
Uh-oh.
Huh? My post with telling people they need to register to vote was declined? What to say to who, to what, to what? So I said, what the heck is this? I don't ordinarily have any kind of real pushback for things when they come up like that. Like I'll just go, okay, like some of the groups I'm in, they don't allow any political posts. So sure, right? Theryn, I want you to know I was all the way outdone last night. I had to have a full-fledged campaign of my own with the Joe Biden for Tennessee group, because here's what they told me. This was the first message that I got in response to the post. I said, check your voters registration. And I'm going to read it, and I quote, seems like if they voted last month, they were verified as registered. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been allowed. Please remember, this is Tennessee for Biden Harris, and we focus on that. Okay. So I'm thinking somebody didn't read my post. They just saw that it had a red X for one of the people who I've been working with, that they said they were registered. So I was saying, have you been purged? Because this person, I didn't name them, but it's been purged and they got a red X, right? So I thought, maybe you didn't understand. So I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt of not understanding. So I sent a message back to them and told them, no, I attempted to make this post notification for the voters to be alerted that some voters that are registered have been purged. Okay, because if you voted last month, to your point there, you shouldn't be purged out of the system in a month. You're active, right? Mm-hmm. And I said, this is exactly, the information I provided is exactly why Tennesseans should have the information so they can vote for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Okay, all right. So then you know what I got? Please ask me what I got there.
Nah, because I already got my thoughts ready.
Here we go. This was the second message I got after, in response to my response to them. We understand the taxes that are being used to disenfranchise voters, especially Democrats, but the active voters are surely responsible enough to check their registration each time they vote. I do. I hope you can understand why we don't allow all posts. We must focus on electing Biden-Harris instead of spreading fear or discouragement. Okay, that was it. So there's one person on there, Tara, who's a moderator. And I was like, so I sent a message to all of the moderators and all of the admins on the group and found that there are no people of color, no Black people, Indian people, no Hispanic people, no people of color in this group, okay? That 90% of the people and all of my admins do not live in the state of Tennessee because it's a campaign site, like I said, okay? And the few who are moderators are in Knoxville. So now Joe Biden for Tennessee's group is on blast with me today because you are not in a position where I'm in a West Tennessee Black woman and I'm a Biden-Harris supporter where you're going to try to You're not going to gag me and tell me what I can and cannot say to my own peers. So then I looked on the site, there are 27,000 people in this group. Of the people that are in the group that I know personally, that are friends with me personally, I sent a message to all of them and let them know what was going on. So if you got a message from me last night about 9:30, that's why, because I was fire hot mad. I'm still lava hot about it, and I'm going to stay lava hot about it. I'm going to talk about it all week. Because here's the thing, the one moderator came back and she said this. She first said, well, can you repost it using iwillvote.com? Okay. iwillvote.com is what they want to use. You're not going to tell me. You can't tell me who to tell people to go and check their voters registration with. I'm not doing that. So the answer is no. The second thing she came back and said is, let me check it, because we're an official campaign group. We have to make sure that the information shared is reliable, and I Will Vote is their reliable source. I'm sorry for the confusion, and the post was declined. You're absolutely right that this information is critical, and for the people to be aware and for them to triple check. So thank you so much for bringing it up. So I responded to her and I said, I appreciate your response and feedback. However, if I'd received something similar to this instead of the condescending bull that I actually received, I wouldn't have been offended. So she says in response, this is she and I communicating this morning. Her name, the moderator, is Tara. I'm sorry for that. We are onboarding new moderators to keep up with the volume and unfortunately missed the mark on this message. I've spoken with the team to let them know that this is the exact type of information that this group is meant to share. I'm sorry that you had to be caught in the crossfires of that. I hope you do resubmit the critically important information and have people check their registration, and we need to get that message out.
Now I'm gonna say something, and I know I'm gonna get some blowback from some folks, and I really don't care because it needs to be said. People like that are why Tennessee is still a red state. Period. We could stop there and shut it down, but people like that are the reason Tennessee is still a red state. But be very clear that Shelby County is very much blue. And so for those that may be watching and don't know, red is typically associated with Republicans, as is an elephant. And blue is typically associated with Democrats, as is a donkey. So what I have found in navigating politics in Tennessee is that people in Knox County have a whole lot to say as far as how politics is curated throughout the entire state. But the last time I checked, the county of Shelby, where we live, of which Memphis is a part of, is the largest county in tax base in the entire state. So how would anybody here not know what they are talking about or not have their opinion valued in a state talking about, in a group talking about statewide politics coming from the largest county in tax base? Make it make sense for me, because right now it doesn't. I knew that you were going to tell me there were no people, no Black or brown folks in that group, because we've seen this time and time again. People want to dictate how Black people, especially Black women, respond or share information, and they can't just leave well enough alone, and they want to tell you how to do it, when to do it, what to say, here's the messaging, and that's it. I promise we are educated enough on our own, and we don't need help. Y'all ain't helped us up until this point. Why would we rely on y'all now? Because is that not who failed us when Trump was elected in 2016? But who gonna save us in 2020? Our way. Okay, great. So with that said, my request would then be, please allow me to serve as a moderator if you are really serious about elevating your moderators in this group and about being inclusive and truly representing everyone in Tennessee. Because first of all, nobody that is not affiliated with the Joe Biden or Kamala Harris campaign, period, should be in that group. They can be outside of Tennessee if they are directly affiliated with the campaign. That makes sense. But if they are not from Tennessee and otherwise not affiliated with the campaign, why are you here? Tennessee politics is different from anywhere else. Shelby County politics is different from anywhere else, and so is Memphis if we break it all the way down. So if we are truly serious in Tennessee about representing positive values and being inclusive, then that means including those people in the decision-making process and not trying to cherry pick how their information is shared, because they just might learn something if they listen for 5 seconds.
And I went back. I said, oh, okay, sure. It's a political campaign site. That's great. However, comma, your moderators and the numbers that you have, there's a whole host. It was 3 pages screenshots full of folks that were moderators and admins there. And I said to myself, you know what? You guys haven't posted anything since early September. So you're not being actively engaged, but you're monitoring and filtering. And so that is going to be my next step. And so what I think the knee-jerk expectation was that I say, oh, just forget this group. I don't have to be a part of it. And I'm just going to, unjoin. Wrong. I'm not going to unjoin. I'm going to stay in, and I'm going to say, well, it looks like you need some representation and moderation from the west side of the state. And here I am. I'm happy to help. I will be happy to support that cause. As a matter of fact, I'm a certified moderator. So who better to serve as a moderator? And I own my own pages, business, personal, and otherwise. So I know all about moderating pages on Facebook. So I'd be happy to do that as a voice of a Black woman. You need me. You need me. And guess what? I'm not going to let off that asset. Do you hear me? I'm not, because this is not the time for us to have infighting. You need to be in a position where you have as many people possible who are saying, I am raising my hand in support of Biden and Harris. There is no reason for me to have been filtered out by supporting people and telling them to go and check their voters registration status, Theryn. That is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. And that is why it had me so upset. Because I say, here you have people who are in a position, who are on the same page with you, who are in the same boat with you. And instead of me saying, hey, give me an oar and let me paddle, you want to tell me how to row? Wrong.
Yep.
It's just wrong. So I'm not giving up that fight. Y'all gonna hear me talk about it Wednesday. You're gonna hear me talk about it Friday. You're gonna hear me talk about it next Monday. I'm gonna talk about it until the cows come home, because this is so vital. And here's the other part about this, Theryn. I'm gonna say
I would also ask that you send me that list, because now I'm curious to see how many people that are moderating that group are a part of the state executive committee in that part of Tennessee.
I'll send it to you. And that's why I screenshotted last night before anything could be modified, so that there was no confusion about my position. Because here's the thing, if you're going to connect with 27,000 people, then I want to make sure that you are truly using that position and power of authority, so that you empower people who want to support Biden and Harris win. If your focus is on getting them elected, then don't block me from telling people to check their voters registration. The fact that I had to even take time to do this is telling somebody else to do something positive. It's ridiculous. And that's divisive. You start spreading fear and discouragement. No, you should be afraid to keep me from saying what I have to say. I'm a Black woman. Don't tell me that. Matter of fact, stand and say, you know what, bravo. And if she's saying usevote.org, we like iwillvote.org. Who cares what you use? All I need for you to do is to go and check your voters registration status at the end of the doggone day. Yep. You can't tell me, you can't dictate to me how I'm supposed to talk. Those times are over. It's 2020.
Oh yes. I checked mine
now. What we use 2020 like it's a curse word now, Darren. What in the 2020 did they think they were doing?
I don't know, but in 2020, I didn't have some of the worst of times and some of the best of times too. So, I think there have been certain terms and conditions that were set, and people are still trying to walk along those. And we are past that. We are past the time of sit down, shut up, be quiet, just wait. I'm tired of waiting. I told somebody before we hopped on this call, if it's not moving forward to adding value, and if I've got to circle back several times for something that was set forth for me, I'm done waiting. I'm done asking, and I'm done what I'm going to just do, and then let you deal with whatever happens as a result of that. Because if I sit back and wait for someone, every time I decide to make a move, I'll either be waiting forever or I'll miss the mark. And some opportunities are only going to come along once, and we owe it to ourselves to make the most of that opportunity. What does it take you to check somebody's registration? Because my question for the other people in that group will be, okay, great, you're supporting Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. What are you doing to encourage people to vote Democrat all the way down the ballot? Right. Have you done voter registration drives? Have you given away signs, stickers, buttons? Are you encouraging people to donate? Are you doing any type of coordinated campaign effort, since this is for Tennessee? Because I can bet that the answer is going to be no or, oh, we're working on it. We are in GOTV. We are less than 20 days away from early voting. Less than 20.
Less than 20.
We in it now. It's here. It's what's your vote plan. It's check your status. If you're not, get re-registered or re-registered. It's figure out where your early voting polling sites. Do you have a ride? If not, which number you calling to get a ride? Do you have the appropriate ID to go do it? Which day you going? Who taking you? That's where we're at. Getting your vote plan together. Ain't no more time left. The time is here. It's get moving.
That's it. That's it. I mean, you summed it up. That's it, Theryn. And so I want to extend an invitation to those of you that are watching to ask us questions. Theryn and I are both, we're gasoline and fire. So you put us together and we can have a conversation all our own, but we want to extend an invitation for you to be engaged, because that's really what this is about. We are talking now because we want to implore you. We want to encourage you. We want to ignite you into action and have a plan. And then, for goodness sake, please reach out to your family members and your friends. Don't make assumptions at this point. This is not the time to make assumptions that people already know. Oh, no, I don't have to ask my cousin because I know she does. Ask your cousin. Ask your cousin if they need a ride to the poll. Ask your cousin if they know where they're going to go to vote. Ask your cousin if they want to meet you at the poll. You know, create some type of incentive. One of the things that we did for the voters registrations, we had this drawing for people so that they could win things that people had donated to them, and they could get in throughout the day 3 weeks ago. My uncle has a thing going at his church where the people who are registered to vote enter a drawing to win a TV that someone donated. So you can make it exciting or fun. I've extended the challenge to my family members for my mother's side of the family and my father's side of the family to have a competition on who's going to do the video. Right now, my mother's side of the family did 3 videos there. So I'm looking for the rows to show up and show out. So all y'all got to do is 4 videos and you have so show up. All I'm doing is, it's important for us to hear your voices and trying to come up with creative new ways to get people engaged. One of the young adults on the panel that I hosted earlier this month, that was on the 16th, said that, we do everything else electronically. What keeps us from voting electronically? What are your thoughts on that?
So I like the idea of that. I think there would have to be high-level security measures in place, because we're talking about when we fill out our voter registration, we have to put our social security number on there. Mm-hmm. And so how are we able, if we have an electronic version of a ballot, how are we able to submit that without putting our social security number at risk? Are we giving people an isolated ID number? Are we asking them to match up their last 4? What can be put in place to make it possible, but also make it safe and secure? And people are Zoom bombing and all these other things. So there are some things that we need to think about security as. I think it's an excellent idea, which is also why I'm in favor of automatic voter registration when you turn 18. I think it should be something that you have to opt out of versus opting in, because if it's automatic, then we can also change the cycle of when you are purged, or how long between you register that you have to vote the first time. What are those parameters? But I think it's an excellent idea. We just have to make sure those security measures are in place, so it doesn't give you 10 votes and I get 1, or your votes don't get guided to the wrong person and there's a glitch. Because if it's digital, there are ways that it can be manipulated, unfortunately. Yeah. And we've seen some people do that with, voting machines here in Shelby County. Right. So the security has to be all the way up in order for that to happen. But I definitely think it's something that should happen.
Here's another thing that you and I both know. For any system that is created, there is someone who can beat the system, right? And so even if you think about it, with the high level of fraud that's happening now with these different monetary systems that are available, and how this is like one of the current latest scams, and with identity theft altogether, and with voters fraud that we've had with the chads and all these different things we've had over the years, that no, and counterfeiting and, you know, and the like, that whatever system we create, there will be the opportunity, because it's man-made, for there to be some error or for it to be hacked or tapped. I love the idea of electronic voting, because it really literally will give you just another level. It doesn't have to be all or nothing, right? Much in the way that we do mail-in votes. But now, can you imagine a time, let's just dream for a minute before we finish, Theryn, that we were in a time where elections were fair, that there was no Russian collusion, that there is early voting, mail-in voting, and electronic voting. How wonderful would that be?
I definitely think it's something that we need to strive for. And there are so many things in place, you know, so many things people were working on too. There were groups of folks that were working on lowering the age for a voter from 18 to 16. There are folks working on automatic voter registration. There are folks working on what the process is to purge somebody. It's always something that is at work. And frankly, we've been on the defense with having to make sure they're secure, let alone eliminate barriers. And so we've got to figure out how to make all those groups work together without being exhausted in the process, because the same people that work on those things, you know, work on campaigns and with bigger issues and candidates and all at the same time. So we tired. But I definitely think with these elections, it's been so problematic for a couple of reasons. One, because of what's happened with the post office. And two, because in the primaries in July and August for early voting and election day, we were like, everybody request your mail-in ballot, like everybody. And then there were some people who didn't get them. And so they had to go into the polls and vote by provisional ballot, which is the absolute last resort. Like completely, like it just has to be. And then now we're saying, all these problems with the post office. The state has been back and forth in litigation regarding what's acceptable to request a mail-in ballot and what's not. So at this point is, look, y'all, get registered, check your status, get registered if you're not, re-register if you've been purged, go vote early. Just go vote early. Unless you are completely not able to walk in, roll in, be pushed in there. Literally, if you just absolutely cannot, okay, request your mail-in ballot. But if you are just more seasoned and you a little achy or you a little fearful, I get it. I got all kinds of ailments too. But go vote early. Please vote early. Now we have switched from mail-in heavy push to early vote heavy push. We have to. If y'all got to wait in line, I'm sorry. I'm sure it'd be tons of people outside giving water if it's hot chocolate or coffee if it's warm. Like, we have to go with the expectation that we might have to wait and it's going to be some foolishness, but I'm going to go in there and early vote. We have to. It's a must.
And then for the people, so I want to talk real quick about contingency, just for people to have the idea. And then you mentioned a couple of different resources. I'll send you the information that I have from those moderators and admins from that group. But you mentioned a couple of different resources, the telephone number where people can call to get information if they have issues with their registration, and on voting, if they go and early vote, what they can do to call if there are issues, and then if they need a ride. So as you get information for those, as we get closer there, please share them with me and I will absolutely post them. And then I also want to just walk someone through the process for the early voting. You have a window of opportunity from October 14th to October 29th to early vote in Shelby County. That means you can go anywhere in the city that has a polling location that's open with your valid driver's license or state issued ID and cast your ballot. You will not have any restrictions with regard to where you're voting during the early voting. So I want to make sure that we share that. Let's say, for example, Theryn, and walk me through this. If someone has checked their registration and they're registered, and October 5th has come and gone, and they know they were registered, they checked it on October 5th, they got a green check on in their thing, they're good. And they go to early vote on October 14th. And for whatever reason, it's not showing them in the system. What do they do?
So there are a couple of things. One, they need to ask the poll, if they are inside the polling site, they need to ask the poll judge to check. And they have a poll book with which they can check. That is like a hard copy. And if they are unable to find it that way, they need to have them call the elections administrator or somebody else that is on site at the election commission at either one of the locations to figure out what is going on. That's one line of defense. If for whatever reason that line of defense doesn't work, the second option is a number that I'll have to send you because there's a whole flyer of it, of kind of if you had issues at the polls or if something didn't go right. There are people that are a part of that voter protection team we talk about to help facilitate those issues. What they do not need to do, though, is please do not vote provisionally if you don't have to. If you have, you can leave and come back. I need to make that very clear because some people feel like, well, they told me I can vote provisionally or they just handed me this piece of paper to vote. Absolutely not. If they cannot rectify your situation while you are on site, you need to leave and call that second number and help. They will help you get it figured out and come back another day. Don't think that you cannot, because you've signed the paper already, that you cannot leave and come back. Yes, you can, because you have not cast your ballot. You have not gotten that voter's card. So that's something that's really important that people need to know is you have options and there are people to call specifically about these issues. Call them. That's what they're there for.
Okay, that's good. Now tell everyone what makes provisional voting not the absolute last course of action.
So provisional, and it just hurts to even say it out loud. Provisional ballots are not counted on election day. They are only counted if the election is challenged or there is such a proximity of votes. And I don't recall what the threshold is right off, but they are not counted with all the other votes unless there are extreme circumstances. And so we tell everybody their voice matters, their vote counts, and we want it to count. Provisional is like the, well, just in case kind of vote, unfortunately, but it's an option that they legally have to present to you for you to show that you showed up in order to cast your ballot and be counted in those elections.
And if they are registered to vote, if they check their registration, no, let me modify that. When you check your registration and it shows that you are registered to vote, should you capture that as verification? If you have to register new, should you keep an email to show that if in case you have issues at the poll?
You can, and then sometimes they'll say, well, they don't know the source of it. They don't know, there are so many sites with which you can check your status now. They might say, well, it's not the official so-and-so by the election commission, even though we know it's valid. While that is the likely thing to do, it may not be the best thing. I would say that if you are able and you do not have your physical voter registration card, which you don't have to go vote, let's be clear. But if you don't have a copy of that, when you check your status, if you see that it is still valid, put in a request for another card. Request to have a replacement card sent to you or available for you to pick up, because they have to track that. They have to track that request. And so if something happens between when that request is made and when you either receive it or go pick it up, then it's definitely not on you, and they can see where the issue happened.
That's good. So that's empowerment, because we want to give you information for you to be empowered is the key. And so one of the key elements of today, aside from checking your voter's registration status, then making sure that you're active, and if not, then register to vote, is to know that when you go early vote, and here's another reason why it's so important for those of you who are ambulatory and able to go early vote. And I encourage you to go within the first couple of days of early voting, so that if you have any issues, you have time still to get them resolved and addressed and then approach, right? You want to go in knowing that we hope we're going to be prepared for the worst. We're going to hope for the best, but we're going to be prepared for the worst. So by doing that early, go the 14th, 15th, 16th, make it your business. So if something does happen, you still have a window of opportunity to get that addressed and corrected. One of my neighbors, because I talked to my neighbors about it, I told her about, you know, the purging of people, and she said she was going to go to the Board of Elections and find out more information about it. What do you think she will find? What are they going to tell her?
Has she been purged? Do you know?
I don't know. I don't know if she was or not, but she said, wait a minute, what? And then last thing is she texted, she said, I'm going to the Board of Elections. I said, okay, let me know what happens.
She can, I would say, if she's unsure of her status, if she is able to check it online or have somebody help her check it online, that would be the first line of defense. If she goes into one of the election commission locations, have them check it. If they say she's been purged, then she needs to be able to re-register. At that point, they can provide you with a voter registration form in person on site at that moment and have you complete it, and then later mail you a card. So if she's willing to go the extra step, whatever she needs to do to feel comfortable for her to walk in that polling site between October and November, have at it. But, you know, I think the information folks like you and several others are providing are to keep you from going down there unless you absolutely have to. So there are a couple of steps that you have before that. And I would encourage people to use those, but definitely kind of where there are these know your status campaigns with all these other issues. This is another know your status, know your registration status.
Yes, key. Was there anything I did not ask you that you said, you know what, I really need to say this while I'm talking to Tracy?
Yeah, I know some of these folks, y'all don't want to vote for. I know they problematic, but you are voting for the Affordable Care Act. You are voting for people to have access to health insurance. You are voting for people who will decide whether or not to finally expand Medicaid in Tennessee. You are voting for criminal justice reform. You are voting for accountability. You are voting for teachers to get raises. You are voting for a better public school system. You are voting for resources that each and every one of us need across this entire state. At some point, you're going to need something from somebody for something. And so this is what you're voting for. So find that one thing. And if that's what it takes to get you in the polls, have at it, go do it, because we need each and every one of us to vote.
Amen. That's it. That's it. Well, you know, as often as you want to come, as often as your schedule, which is action-packed and full to the full, your schedule is here. But as often as you want to take time out to come and help reinforce this, and if there's anything I can do from my end for you, please don't hesitate to ask Theryn. You have just such a wonderful, wonderful gift of knowledge. I'm grateful that you took time today to share it with us and the others in the T-Row crew. Thank you so much. So I'm going to sign out. We didn't get any questions, I think, because we gave them so much information that they were able to, it's just their process. I hope, and they're going to check their registration status, right? But we have so much more we can still talk about, because we know that early election, I want us to talk during the early election. I have taken off November 3rd, so that on the day of the election, and I want to help people formulate a plan. So what you said today was really vital. That's some great information about making a voting plan, that you got to make sure that you know what your steps are, and then help other people know what their steps are too, so that we can be in this together, because we truly have to be united to build back better. Good night. We got to build back, y'all. I mean, if we don't, we're going to be in trouble. I mean, and that stands for Tracy. So now, that's it. That's all, y'all. I hope you've enjoyed this marvelous Monday with Theryn C. Bond and Tracy T-Row. We have given you information that you needed and that we want you to use. We want to ignite. We plan to come here today and light a fire and be lava hot, mad, and lit like Theryn and me about. It's our lives that are impacted. It's our towns, it's our neighborhoods, it's our families, and it's all up to us. So now you take everything that you said, and if you couldn't get it all, play it back. I'll post this thing again. It's going to be on this page. It's going to be on YouTube. It's everywhere you want to get it. There is no secret when it comes to the Tracy T. Row Live at Lunch. So take the time and information to educate yourselves. Register to vote. Check your status. Know your status. That's it. That's all. I hope you have. Wait a minute. I forgot there. And I got to say this. You matter to me. And there is nothing you can do about it. Here's a big cyber hug from me to you. Have a fantastically marvelous Monday. And make sure that you make every day amazing and live like it's a gift, because it truly is. I'll see you back here on Wednesday. And yes, I'm still going to talk about the Joe Biden Tennessee group, because hopefully I'll have an update for y'all, because I'm not playing with them. All righty, I'll see y'all on Wednesday.